Modern Women Tutorials. Are you toxic? Something that I notice among the ladies, tends, especially online, is them complaining about their exes being toxic. Now, I understand if you have like maybe one or two exes that's toxic, but if all your exes, which are 30 plus dudes you dated, are toxic, there's a problem there with you, not them. Could you keep picking toxic dudes? You think after the first or second toxic guy, you might consider not dating guys for a long while until you find a guy, that is very, very different than those guys you dated, right? It should be very obvious what a toxic guy looks like, what he sounds like, right? Because that's what makes a person, right? Is how they behave, what they say, right? Actions and words, right? And actions speak louder than the words, right? So you think you would have picked on up real quick on what makes a guy toxic, so you would avoid them. But if you dated 30 plus dudes, you kind of either you're terrible at determining what type of toxic guy looks like, or you deliberately choosing toxic guys, which goes to the contradiction of why you're on the internet complaining about your toxic ex when you chose them. Clearly, you like toxic guys, or you're projecting. The real toxic person is you. You're the toxic one. You've been in 30 relationships, and all of the relationships were toxic, and you were in all of those relationships. So maybe the toxic one is you. Because what's ironic, out of those guys you dated, they end up in better relationships, in good relationships. They end up being the good man that other women was looking for. When women say, "Oh, where all the good men at?" They tend to find them, and usually they are your exes, which begs to differ. Well, it begs the question. That's what I meant to say. Was it really them, this toxic one, or was it you? But let's go with the toxic boyfriend thing, right? You pick toxic guys, whether it was accidentally or on purpose. What makes you think you didn't become toxic because of them? If you're in toxic relationships, you think you came out of those toxic relationships untoxified? You think you didn't get influenced by the toxic behaviors? So an example for this, from personal experience from me, is something that I noticed just with my own mother. Because I good relations with my mother. I noticed that a lot of the guys that she dated over the years, when I was young and got older, did things. Like, for example, she dated a guy who drank, beer. She never drank beer before. She dated him. She started drinking beer. She dated a guy who smoked cigarettes. She started smoking cigarettes. Right? And the list went on. So I noticed that pattern. And not only in her, I noticed this in some of my exes. I noticed this in other people's relationships. I noticed there's a pattern that whenever a breakup happens, I mean, sometimes while somebody's in a relationship, ladies pick up certain habits. A lot of times they pick up a lot of the bad habits from the guy they're dating. I always try to make sure ladies that I date pick up good habits. I always try to make sure that after we break up, that they are better afterwards than they were when they first met me. Because interestingly, most ladies tend to already be not doing so well when they meet me, so I tend to help them do better. But anyway, it's something that I noticed that ladies tend to pick something. Now, is it possible to get good habits from a guy? Yeah, that is possible. But the point I'm making is a lot of the ladies you see online complain about their toxic ex, always take into account there's a probability that either A, you were toxic, they were never toxic, or they were toxic. But what makes you think you're not toxic now? There's a high probability you are toxic now. If you dealt with a lot of toxic guys or girls, this applies to guys too. If you dealt with a lot of toxic people, eventually that toxicity is going to rub off. And you think you're going to be great and perfect for the next person you date? No, more likely you're going to, infect them with your toxicity, right? What if you are the reason why, all the guys you dated became toxic, right? Because sometimes you hear ladies talk about, oh, at first he was good, but then he changed up on me. So he was good when y'all started dating, and then over time he stopped being so good. Could it be that you rubbed off on him? Your toxic traits rubbed off on him? And then you didn't like it. Another thing I noticed is some people don't like it when somebody is similar to them, right? It is a weird thing to dislike somebody who's a lot like you, right? Like there's some people who like to be like I'm, what is that term? The idea of they like to speak their mind. Or like, I speak my mind all the time. And then when they meet somebody who's also the same way, they speak their mind all the time, then they tend to hate that person. Like, oh my God, this person's such an asshole. Like, they're constantly saying what's on their mind, like if anyone cares. It's like, and then you look at them like, are you kidding me? You do the exact same thing. You and that person are exactly the same. Y'all both act the same. But they don't see it that way. And that's the weirdness, right? When you see somebody just like an asshole doesn't realize he's an asshole until somebody points it out to them. But the irony is, if they meet somebody who's an asshole, they will recognize the asshole behavior and be like, oh shit, this person's an asshole. But they don't see themselves as the asshole. Just like I noticed lately, a lot of ladies have been talking about like, yeah, I don't consider myself broke, even when you are broke. It's like, that's interesting, because when it comes to a guy, you're quick to say they're broke. When it comes to a guy or another female, basically another person, when it comes to another person, you have no problem saying they're broke, which clearly you're saying it as an insult, but you won't say that about yourself, even when you are broke, which would not be an insult to yourself. It would be an actual description, an accurate description of your situation. If you just got paid and then paid off all your bills and now you have $0, well, you're broke. But a lot of ladies nowadays won't say they're broke. They just say, oh, I just don't got money right now, but I will next time. So that's cool. Yeah, that applies to anybody. But the thing is, you'll say you're not broke in that scenario, but if somebody else is in that same exact scenario, oh no, you broke. And that's kind of messed up, don't you think? To project that negativity outward, but you will never reflect that onto yourself. So this is something I noticed over and over, the pattern. So it's like, that's why I posed the question, are you toxic? Do you know for a fact you are not the problem in your relationships? Because it's easy to say somebody else is the problem, but it's not easy to say you're the problem. And mathematically, there's a high probability, since you dated a whole bunch of people, and if all the relationships were not that good, either A, you keep picking the same type of person, the toxic person, right? Or B, you are the toxic person, and you're the one that brings the toxicity to the relationship. So you might want to work on that. Try to reduce your toxicity, right? And not bring it into the next relationship. Something I notice a lot of ladies do is they'll bring, their exes into the next relationship, as in they'll compare their ex to the new guy they're dating. So the new guy has to live up to, to her new standard. Her new standard is, well, you can't do what my ex did. So if you say something that my ex says, it's a problem. If you act like my ex, it's a problem. And the list goes on. Guys don't think that way. If anything, we want the new woman we're with to be like our ex, because our ex typically have a lot of great qualities. Maybe one quality we didn't like, and hopefully the new girlfriend does not have that negative quality. Hopefully they have all the good qualities, but not that one negative quality, right? But for you ladies, it's always, oh, he better not act or say or think, right? Anything like my exes. It's like, oh, that's a little extreme. 90% of guys are the same and 90% of females are the same. So we're going to think and say a lot of the same stuff, whether we're a good person or not.